20 ChatGPT prompts to write code in Python. Python has become one of the most popular programming languages worldwide. However, whether you are a beginner or an experienced developer, there are moments when you could use a helping hand with your Python code. ChatGPT, a remarkable AI language model developed by OpenAI, can help you in writing Python code efficiently and effectively. In this video, I will show you 20 ChatGPT prompts to write code in Python. Open ChatGPT website. By using this link, you can open this website. Prompt 1. I will say, write Python code to calculate the factorial of a given number. Here is a Python code to calculate the factorial of a given number. This is the Python code. Click on Copy Code. This code defines a factorial function that takes an integer n as input and calculates the factorial of that number. It handles negative numbers and 0 gracefully and computes the factorial for positive integers. The program also prompts the user for input and provides the factorial as output. Prompt 2. I will say, generate Python code to reverse a string. Here is a Python code to reverse a string. This is the Python code. This code defines a reverse string function that takes an input string and uses slicing to reverse it. It then prompts the user to enter a string, reverses it, and prints the reverse string as the output. Prompt 3. I will say, create Python code to check if a number is prime. Here is a Python code to check if a number is prime or not. This is the Python code. This is the explanation for the code. Prompt 4. I will say, write Python code to find the largest element in a list. Here is a Python code to find the largest element in a list. This is the Python code. Here you will get the explanation for the code. Prompt 5. I will say, generate Python code to calculate the sum of all elements in a list. Here is a Python code to calculate the sum of all elements in a list. This is the Python code. This is the explanation for the code. Prompt 6. I will say, create Python code to implement a basic calculator. Here is a Python code to implement a basic calculator that can perform addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. This is the Python code. This code provides a basic command line calculator where the user can choose to add, subtract, multiply, or divide two numbers. The program continues to run until the user enters exit. It performs the requested operation and displays the result. Prompt 7. I will say, write Python code to find the square root of a number. You can find the square root of a number in Python using the math module or the exponentiation operator. Here is an example of using both approaches. Using the math module, this is the Python code. Using the exponentiation operator, this is the Python code. Both of these codes examples allow the users to input a number and then calculates and display its square root. They also handle the case of negative numbers for which the square root is not defined. Prompt 8. I will say, generate Python code to sort a list of integers in ascending order. Which response do you prefer? Response 1 or response 2? Click on the one which you like. I will click on response number 2. Here it is written that you can use the sorted function to sort a list of integers in ascending order. Here is an example code. This is the Python code. This is the explanation for the code. Prompt 9. I will say, create Python code to read data from a CSV file. You can use a CSV module in Python to read data from a CSV file. Here is an example code that demonstrates how to do this. Assuming you have a CSV file named data.csv with the following content. This is the SQL code. You can use the following Python code to read and print the data from this CSV file. This is the Python code. This is the explanation for the code. Prompt 10. I will say, write Python code to create a simple class with attributes and methods. Here is an example of a simple Python class with attributes and methods. This is the Python code. Here is the explanation for the code. Prompt 11. I will say, generate Python code to scrape data from a website using beautiful soap. To scrape data from a website using Beautiful Soap in Python, you will need to install the Beautiful Soap 4 library and the request library if you haven't already. You can install them using pip. This is the pip code. Here is an example of Python code to scrap data from a website using beautiful soap. This is the Python code. You can modify the code to extract different data from the website based on your requirements. Make sure to inspect the website's HTML structure to understand how to target the data you want to scrap. Prompt 12. I will say, create Python code to perform a linear regression analysis on a data set. To perform a linear regression analysis on a dataset in Python, you can use libraries like NumPy and scikit-learn. Here is an example code that demonstrates a simple linear regression analysis using scikit-learn. This is the Python code. This is the explanation for the code. You can replace the sample data with your own dataset for a more meaningful analysis. This code is a basic example of a linear regression analysis and can be extended for more complex datasets and analyses as needed. Prompt 13. I will say, write Python code to implement a basic web server using Flask. To create a basic web server using Flask, you will need to install the Flask library if you haven't already. You can install it using pip. Here is a simple Python code to implement a basic web server using Flask. This is the Python code. This is the explanation for the code. This is a very basic example. You can define more routes and handle different types of HTTP requests, render HTML templates, and interact with databases to build more complex web applications with Flask. Prompt 14. I will say, generate Python code to connect to a MySQL database and fetch data. To connect to a MySQL database and fetch data in Python, you can use the MySQL connector library, which provides an interface for connecting to MySQL databases. Here is an example code that demonstrates how to connect to a MySQL database, execute a query, and fetch data. First, you need to install the MySQL.connector library if you haven't already. Here is a Python code example to connect to a MySQL database and fetch data. This is the Python code. This is the explanation for the code. This code is a basic example of connecting to a MySQL database and fetching data. You can extend it to perform more complex database operations and error handling as needed. Prompt 15. I will say, create Python code to send an email using the SMTPLIB library. To send an email using the SMTP library in Python, you will need access to an SMTP server, for example, from your email provider, and the email message details. Here is an example code for sending an email. This is the explanation for the code. Make sure to use valid email addresses and SMTP server details in this code. Additionally, ensure that you have allowed less secure apps or generated an app password if required for your email account if you are using Gmail or a similar service. Prompt 16. I will say, write Python code to create and save data to a JSON file. You can use Python's built-in JSON module to create and save data to a JSON file. Here is an example of Python code to create a dictionary, convert it to a JSON string and save it to a JSON file. This is the Python code. This is the explanation for the code. After running this code, you will have a JSON file named data.json in the current directory containing the data from the data dictionary. You can modify the data dictionary to contain your own data before saving it to the JSON file. Prompt 17. I will say, generate Python code to implement a basic chatbot using NLTK. Creating a basic chatbot using NLTK Natural Language Toolkit in Python involves natural language processing and creating simple response rules. Here is an example of a simple chatbot that can respond to some predefined user inputs. This is the Python code. This is the explanation for the code. You can modify the patterns and responses to make the chatbot more interactive and add additional rules. This is a very basic example, and NLTK provides more advanced natural language processing capabilities that can be used to create more sophisticated chatbots. Prompt 18. I will say, create Python code to extract text from a PDF file. To extract text from a PDF file in Python, you can use the pypdf2 library. First, you need to install the library. Then, you can use the following Python code to extract text from a PDF file. This is the Python code. This is the explanation for the code. Prompt 19. I will say, write Python code to perform image manipulation using OpenCV. To perform image manipulation using OpenCV in Python, you first need to install the OpenCV library if you haven't already. Here is an example Python code that demonstrates some basic image manipulation operations using OpenCV. This is a Python code. This is an explanation for the code. You can modify this code to perform other image manipulation operations such as rotation, cropping, or applying various image processing filters provided by OpenCV. Make sure to replace input.jpg with the path to your own image file. Prompt 20. I will say, generate Python code to create a simple GUI application using tkinter. To create a simple GUI application using tkinter, you can use the following Python code as an example. This code creates a basic GUI with a window, a label, and a button. This is the Python code. This is an explanation for the code. You can customize this code and add more widgets and functionality to build more complex GUI applications using tkinter. I am done with showing you 20 ChatGPT prompts to write code in Python. I hope this video will be helpful for you. Thank you for watching this video.